Mammals look pretty boring. I mean, they're not, but they do look a little bit boring, don't they? They're a bit bland. Mostly they are different shades of grey, black, brown, white, blonde or beige. For heaven's sake, give me a purple bear, a neon blue tabby cat or a pink Thompson's gazelle. But you won't, will you, evolution? You're all about how their colorations blend in with their environment to prevent them from getting eaten or helping them to eat other mammals. You're a coward, evolution. A coward. Mother Nature, just take a trip down to Boots and then dip a vole into a vat of neon blue Schwarzkopf. It doesn't have to be all of them, just make them more visually appealing. It's all about me. One mammal who doesn't need to is Bucky. Bucky is a good rabbit. He's made an effort to stand out from the grey, brown and white lupus fare. And he's also rocking that My Chemical Romance garb as well from the look of him. Nicely done. Now, I've long thought that Bucky O'Hare was a rip-off of a Star Wars character, that being Jackson, the suspiciously Bucky O'Hare extra character insert that joined the Skywalker and Solo crew in their very early Marvel comics. But apparently it's not as clear-cut as that. I thought that Bucky O'Hare started in the 90s, but apparently it didn't. You see, Bucky O'Hare and Jackson share the same birth year of 1977, and much like his Darth-bothering counterpart, our hero Bucky was birthed onto the pages of a comic strip penned by actor/writer Larry Hama and Michael Golden, who did the original design for X-Men's Rogue. The actual first comic of Bucky O'Hare, though, wasn't published until 1984, so perhaps Jackson has the legal edge if he wanted to sue, which he doesn't because he isn't real. Now, there was a bit of a thirst for television and toy execs for action-orientated anthropomorphic animals in the early 1990s because, well, why do you think? So Sunbow Productions took the cult comic series and turned it into an animated series. Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars aired in the US in 1991 and was brought before British children's faces a year later by the BBC. I watched it a little bit, but wasn't perhaps as into this as I would have been a couple of years before, as I was 14 when this came out. Neighbours was on, and Neighbours was full of very pretty young ladies. Bucky O'Hare is the captain of a spacecraft called the Righteous Indignation, and he leads a crew of fellow beasts in a different dimension called the Aniverse against the sinister Toad Empire. They're joined in this battle by a super-intelligent San Francisco child genius called Willie DeWitt, who has stumbled into this space squabble thanks to an accident involving his own self-made photon accelerator machinery. Parents, don't let your children have access to the parts for a photon accelerator. At home, they may get lost in an interstellar war happening in a neighbouring dimension. I guess it's up to us YouTubers to do the public safety announcements these days, is it? Hasbro released a line of figures in 1991, and sadly they didn't do well enough to get a second line of figures, and the line was terminated, along with the series. The series only lasted 13 episodes. 3 games were released via Konami, one of which was one of those LCD handheld doohickeys like Tiger Electronics, which is probably as limited as you would expect. The NES one, though, is absolutely banging. It plays a bit like Mega Man, but with a character swapping of a Tiny Toons. Each of the crew has different abilities, and you'll need to rescue your squad in order to use their abilities and get further in the game. It's an absolute classic, and I should probably have played the NES one over the arcade for the review, as it has a lot more going on for it. The arcade game, which is still entertaining enough, don't you worry, was placed into your seaside resort or into your visiting travelling fair in September of 1992. The plotline has the crew attempting to thwart the Toad Empire from their expansionist ways. Indeed, this even allows Bucky to get his hands on the villainous complex, the artificial intelligence that has taken control of the Toads and pushed this terror agenda upon them. The game has small sequences which feature all of the animation's voice actors, which is something that I don't think the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game really did make good use of. It's a 4-player cabinet with the 4 selectable characters consisting of Clint Eastwood's channeling allotment botherer Bucky, a slightly creepily extra-limbed mallard called Dead-Eye Duck, who handily is well named as he is both A duck and B, has a dead eye. There's further monoocular representation, courtesy of Blinky, who's sort of like a Swiss Army cannon of different weapons, all in a cute and charming light relief android. And then you've got Jenny, who has the moniker of a 1990s Price is Right contestant and the frame of a furry convention attender's wettest of wet dreams. Meow. Baboon Bruiser and human child Willie DeWitt sit this one out, though they do appear in some of the game's cutscenes. The villains from the show get decent representation too. Much like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade games, they appear at the end of the stages as the game's cadre of villainous bosses. The game opts for a bright, vibrant colour palette and slinky, well-animated interpretations of the characters. The backgrounds are pretty nice too. They take in a smorgasbord of different planets and technological enemy bases.
Everything's computer.
The gameplay is a hybrid of Konami's licensed beat-em-ups like The Simpsons and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, blended in with Sunset Riders. Think Konami's attempt at Aliens, but with critters. Whilst the crew have some close-range attacks and a particularly devastating dive kick, they will tend to opt for laying waste to the army of evil amphibians with a quick flick of their trigger finger. Should the odds become a bit too much for you, don't worry, there's always your limited use Contra 3 style smart bomb, which can clear the enemy of regular toads and push home an advantage on their senior officers at the end of each stage. Variety is added with a few sequences which sees your characters don jetpacks or jump into little mini spaceships and take to the skies, though these stages are used fairly sparingly. It would definitely be a game that would be difficult to complete on one credit. There are probably too many enemies on the screen at any one point to escape through a stage for intact. While there are power-ups to improve your laser blasters and also health and smart bomb replenishments, the stages aren't overflowing with them. I quite enjoy Konami's belt scrollers, but there's something a little bit off about this one. Could it be that I don't have the same level of nostalgia for Bucky O'Hare as I do for The Simpsons or Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles? But Vendetta is one of my favourite arcade games, and there's nothing to be nostalgic about there, unless you get really nostalgic about Hulk Hogan in dad jeans getting bummed by gay stereotypes. And if you're getting nostalgic from that, have you seen that? And if so, you should probably report that to your nearest tabloid. I don't think that the pairing of scrolling beat-em-up and shooter marries up particularly well, to be honest. Aliens was okay, but that introduced its straight-up shooting sequences a lot earlier, therefore offered more variety. I genuinely think that Bucky O'Hare should have literally stuck to its actual guns and gone for a straight-up 2D scrolling shooter like Sunset Riders, which is something Konami did with the instantly forgettable license of Cowboys of Moon Mesa, which is a far superior game to Bucky O'Hare as a result. Still, I suspect fans of Bucky O'Hare will have an entirely different opinion to me on this, and it's not a terrible game by any means. Let's croak some toast? You can with this game, but I would probably suggest that your croaking of toast should be done on the NES game first. It is the better game. As far as I'm aware, and potentially because of its license and the various legal wranglings that would involve Marvel and Sunbow and the original writers and Hasbro, as a result, we've not seen Bucky O'Hare the arcade game appear on any home platforms either of the time or in any collection or digital storefront. So get yourself onto MAME if you'd like to experience it, though I suspect it might be found in an NQ64 or an arcade club or an Arcanes somewhere. I don't know. I probably won't go back to it. I found it as dull as the hair colour of your average rabbit. Next up, well, you know I like brightly coloured mammals, don't you? So let's go where we're guaranteed to see one. How about the Game Boy Advance game of Care Bears? like, subscribe, and K thanks bye.